Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 238th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We are in the deep of it. The Reichstag has been burned, and we are facing now the bottomless pit of American fascism. We have a ton to talk about, starting with the Second Amendment. But we're going to have our poem from Mimi German. We're going to talk about different forms of organizing, gerrymandering the protection of what's left of American democracy. We are now really at the core of the fight that everybody knew was coming. In the second hour, we're joined by the great Howie Hawkins. We're going to have a discussion of the Green Power movement in Ukraine and why that energy war is at the core of the global transition to renewables and what role Ukraine needs to play in it. We're also going to talk with Joe Mangano about radiation and the health impacts around the nuclear power plants, which have not been tested over time. We have we're going to have the great Carl Grossman with us. Carl and I have co-authored a piece which is now up at Counterpunch. I'm not sure if it's been up yet at freepress.org, a definitive long piece about the Trump attack on renewables and how it plays into global fascism and the role of nuclear power in doing all that. So we have just a total full boat. We're going to revisit, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein, who has been pushed off the global media for the time being, but how we really one of the things that's been ignored with Jeffrey Epstein has been his role in money laundering, and that needs to be revisited amidst all else that's going on. But we are very clearly now, we have people have been predicting the burning of the Reichstag to facilitate the transition to American fascism, and it has happened. And we are in the middle of it, and we're going to start after a couple of ticks of to discuss that, and especially the First Amendment. So let's get down to it. We have our poet laureate, Mimi German, with us. Mimi, you got a little verse here to get us. We are not adverse to your verse, so let's hear what we got going. We also got Jonathan Beard with us. Hi, Jonathan, who's going to talk about people moving into red states. Go ahead, Mimi German, please.
Okay, thank you, Sluggo. I do have
Okay.
I have a little verse. You knew. And here it is. Seems difficult, the ease in which we choose not to leave a flower in the ground, but to pluck from earth its very essence, only to watch it die in a vase. Thank you.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. And we don't want to pluck any flowers here. What we want to do is smell them and remember that they're still they're still available to be sniffed. I do want to, before we go on, remind everybody that the business with Jeffrey Epstein is not finished. This has been a very temporarily successful attempt on the part of the Trump regime to get the Epstein files out of the public eye. And I'm
Harvey, you went
Muted, Harvey.
There we go. I'm no longer muted. And but I want to remind people that there is a depth to the Epstein situation, which goes very, very far beyond his procurement of young girls for people like Donald Trump. I think at this point people are yelling to get the Epstein files. I don't think there's anything in the Epstein files that we haven't already heard about Donald Trump's relationship with the young women that were procured, shall we say, by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. We know chapter and verse of all the corruption involved and the lists and Trump's closeness to Epstein. That doodle he did, which I'm glad came out early enough. But what's not been dealt with in the Epstein files, and I did talk to Epstein situation. I did talk to David K. Johnston about it briefly about a week ago, is the money laundering. People have to remember that Donald Trump's fortune was made laundering money from Russian oligarchs. What happened was when the Soviet Union fell, there was a tremendous population of mobsters in the gulag. They got out, they took over the country, and they made billions and billions of rubles. They wanted to transition those rubles into dollars. What they needed was a corrupt con man in the United States who had real estate and was bankrupt. And God sent them Donald Trump. And with the help of Jeffrey Epstein, and this is one of the reasons why Epstein and Trump were so close, is that Epstein had the mathematical ability and the financial connections with Deutsche Bank and other institutions to run those rubles through Donald Trump and into his the real estate that he inherited from his father. And so you have instance after instance of Trump with real estate making huge deals with Russian oligarchs to take their rubles and turn them into American real estate. And so, in addition to all the sexual stuff that Epstein and Trump were involved with, there's the money laundering. If there's anything, and my bet is that a lot of what they're hiding in the Epstein files has to do with the financial records of Trump laundering Russian rubles. And that's why Putin is so critical to this. We know that Putin and Epstein were close. They knew each other. And Putin, of course, took over the former Soviet Union on December 31st, 1999, which would have been my 54th birthday. And and he has all the records of what the oligarchs did to launder Russian money, Russian rubles through Donald Trump. And that's what is in the Epstein files, in addition to everything about Trump's philandering. And of course, all the yelling and screaming now about this latest murder. We didn't hear it at all with Melissa Hortman being murdered in Minnesota, but now we're hearing it. And they have successfully, at least for the time being, taken the Epstein files and the whole case of Donald Trump involving Jeffrey Epstein off the front pages. And it has not, or even any media coverage. And the stuff with the women goes on. We have not heard about the money laundering. And that's the other shoe to drop. And with Deutsche Bank and more. And we will see when it resurfaces. Steve Caruso, did you have a hand here? We have 71 people to start here.
Yeah, we know Wexner had ties with the mafia in New York State, according to Dr. Petrakis, and that perhaps this money laundering also extended to the Wexner empire here in Ohio, where the Central Valley of new tech innovation happens in New Albany, which was Epstein's empire as well as Wexner's at one point. Thanks.
Right. So yes, the money laundering and the mob connections with Donald Trump, they're submerged for the moment. They have burned the Reichstag. We don't know what's going to come next, but this is the moment where they have. I do want to mention, and I've written a piece about this, but I haven't put it out yet, so because I wanted to have this discussion. And for the next few moments, I want to talk about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment to the Constitution starts with a phrase: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be, I think it's abridged. What's the word there? But the bottom line is James Madison, who wrote the Second Amendment, was quite brilliant. And he did not envision and did not mean to approve or give legal sanction to the idea that everybody in the United States, in the new country, this was in 1791, so the Constitution was just 2 years old, that everybody in the United States had the right to own a gun. That has only come through the Supreme Court, and very importantly, in the Heller decision, Clarence Thomas, which has given the imprimatur to the idea that everybody in the United States can own a gun. It is not what the Second Amendment says. The Second Amendment says that if you are to own a gun in this country, you need to be part of a well-regulated militia. There was a reason for that. In the 1790s, every state, every community had a militia. There was no national army. Not until Washington formed one to collect the whiskey tax, which is another story. But the bottom line here is that all this talk about the Second Amendment giving everybody the right to a gun is false. And the guy who killed Melissa Hartman and the kid who just killed this other guy, they did not have the right to own guns. They were not part of a well-regulated militia, and they did not have any legal document showing that their owning a gun was essential to the security of a free state. And so all this screaming and yelling about this latest assassination, and God knows we've had enough of them in this country. I can personally remember, as most of you can, the assassinations of Medgar Evers, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X. The list goes on and on. And so now we have another assassination with a kid, 22 years old, who had absolutely no business owning a gun. He should never have had a gun. Nor should the guy who killed Melissa Hartman have had a gun. And that's the essence of what should be the essence of this ranting and raving about this latest killing. So I want everybody to please think about it. I've written a piece. I'll put it up at the Free Press in the next couple of days. I got some great feedback from Pete Pekarsky, a great lawyer, and I want your feedback too. Anybody want to comment on this? Please do.
Hey, my hand is up.
Go ahead,
Hi.
Dorothy. Go
Hi,
ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So first of all, this kid seems to have been a hunter with his family, and everybody, including Democrats, goes, well, if you want to kill deer, that's all fine with us, you know. But it's looking more and more like he might have been further to the right than Charlie Kirk. It looks like he was a fan of Nick Fuentes.
Mm.
And
Yes.
Vanity Fair and a couple of other places are covering that, but it looks like, you know, he went down a really bad rabbit hole and got into far right politics where Charlie Kirk was not radical enough for him.
Yes. Well, there's two lines of thought that I've seen so far. One is that he was a part of this Nick Fuentes Groyper. Well, how do these guys come up? You know, Groyper, Proud Boys, you got to be kidding me. But Boogaloo, whatever. But the Groyper movement thought that this guy, Charles Kirk, was insufficiently radical, and they actually termed him a fascist and should have been killed. And this kid was allegedly part of that. They have since come up with this other meme that he was in love with a trans person, and that drove it. And that was on the front page of the New York Times, coming from the governor of Utah. Now, the kid himself, and I will refer to him as a kid, he's 22. I have grandchildren older than him. He's shut up. He's in custody. He's not talking.
He's not. Why would he talk? But yeah, the governor immediately said that his politics were left wing, and by the governor saying that, he unleashed all this hell that's going on.
Well, he helped. I mean, look, you know, let's look back at what Trump said about the killing of Melissa Hartman, which was basically nothing. He did send a note, and that was it. And then he attacked Tim Walz.
He didn't care.
The governor of no, he did care. He was glad she was dead.
Yeah,
But he attacked the governor of Minnesota somehow. But Melissa Hartman has never had the flags lowered to half-mast, never had a moment of silence at Yankee Stadium. I wish the Twins in Minnesota would have a moment of silence for her. But this obviously is the Reichstag moment. Elon Musk has put out a fascist call to dictatorship. Laura Loomer has said she wants Trump to be a dictator. They had a guy on Fox saying that homeless people should be put to death. This is
He said he
this
was
is the,
sorry.
yeah, right. Well, I'm glad he did. Actually, I'm glad he did. But so this is the unleashing of the dogs of hell here.
We have to be sure that we find out that this was a
Well, but what I'm
that
saying,
we make sure that when we find out this guy was further right wing, that gets out there. Also, the
yes,
good
but the bottom line is they're going to paint it however they paint it, and
the good yeah.
his motive is not what's key here.
Do you know
What's key is
Jason?
that what
Do you know Jason Leopold?
I've heard
You
the
ever
name.
heard of him? He's
No,
an investigative reporter. I've known him for many years. He's the one who he led the team on the Epstein piece in Bloomberg. And he told me that his next assignment is Charlie Kirk. And he said he was going
right.
to be
And there's
respectful. And I said, don't you dare be respectful. You need to get to the bottom of this. And so
right,
I'm looking forward to his reporting on that.
but the one thing, whatever the motive of this kid was, the bottom line is he should never have had a gun.
Well, that's not true because you're allowed to hunt in this country. You know, he had a rifle. He didn't have an
No,
AK-15.
I'm sorry. He used a gun to kill a human being.
Yeah,
He should,
yeah.
under the Second Amendment, he had to belong. In order to have that gun, he had to belong to a well-regulated militia.
Well, then
The
you
bottom
need to
line.
take millions of guns. I would like to take all the guns away. I mean, his dad had a gun. His gun, dad was a
Well, he
sheriff.
grew up in the gun culture. We know that.
Yeah,
There's a
right. He
very
grew
good
up.
piece. I'm sorry, I forget
That's
this.
why he was such a good shot.
There's two women who do a blog. Maybe some of you know, and she came out immediately with an in-depth investigation of this kid. He grew up, his parents took him to gun shows. He grew up in the gun culture. His parents are well-to-do, extreme right-wing MAGA people, and he grew up as a Mormon. When the father saw the picture of his son having just shot this guy, the father didn't call the police. He called the pastor. He called the family pastor, and the pastor called the police. So this is complicated, but in the long run, I don't care about this kid's motivation any more than I cared about the politics of the Danish guy in 1939 who burned the Reichstag. 19, what year was it? 40, whatever it was. Maybe it was 39. But whoever burned the Reichstag, they're still arguing about his politics. It doesn't matter. Well, and here, the thing that's going to be with us is the Second Amendment. And that has to be fully vetted. And people have to. James Madison never in a million years wanted everybody in the United States to have a gun. That is not the purpose of the Second Amendment, for God's sakes. Mimi, go ahead, please. Thank you, Dorothy. If you want to say more, please do. Go ahead, Mimi.
So, as somebody who lives in an extremely red part of the state of Oregon, I can tell you that every single person I know who is a Republican and worse believes that they don't have to join a militia. They are the militia. And that's not me saying that. Like, when Trump called everybody together for January 6th, they all knew who he was talking to. We knew who he was talking to, who he was calling in. And he was calling in everybody who knows that they are the militia. So whether or not that's real or not, as far as what it means to actually join a militia according to the Second Amendment, doesn't matter anymore, because these freaks really believe that they are this militia.
That's right.
And that is the problem,
Right. The Second Amendment did not, and I take James Madison seriously. I take the verbiage of the Second Amendment seriously. And it was never his idea that everybody, or the people who voted in the Second Amendment, that everybody was automatically part of a militia. That was not the founding principle. What people want to believe now, okay, that's what they believe, but that's not the law. And that's not the Constitution. So when I hear, Trump calling on the Second Amendment types to kill Hillary Clinton, which he did, that's it as far as I'm concerned. So you're right. You're 100% right. That has been used by Clarence Thomas and others, that idea that everybody is part of the militia. But it's not what the Second Amendment says or meant. So there you go. Mike Hersh, Brent Miller, thank you. Um, um,
Yes, Slug, I want to say I agree with you on the Second Amendment, and also former Chief Justice, the late Warren Burger, hardly a liberal, agrees with our position that the Second Amendment does not grant people an individual right to own whatever guns they want. And unfortunately, that is the way the modern Supreme Court has been interpreting it. But I wanted to announce that our guest, Jenny Gage, is here, and she might have some insights on this particular issue, having grown up in Utah and being familiar with the culture that we're discussing.
okay. Can we get Erica real quick, and then we'll go to Jenny? Okay.
Do
Erica
that.
got a hand, and then we'll go to Jenny. Go ahead, Erica, please. Oh, and then Brent, and then we'll go to Jenny.
All right. I think even if he had intended more Americans to be in-home gun owners, I don't believe the founders would be excited. They were thinking about muskets though, not things that could blow up a whole room full of people in like under a minute. And some of that, I don't think they had this in mind. Even if they did,
No.
make sure that we had them at home.
To a man, and they were all men.
Yeah.
Every founder, every signer of the Constitution, everybody who supported the Second Amendment at the time, which was 1791, be horrified to see what gun ownership looks like today in America. This was not a part of the founding idea. Thank you, Erica. Brent, and then we're going to go to Jenny.
I can speak a bit to the Mormon culture myself. I'm an ex-member, fourth generation in the church. They teach you to be prepared for at least 7 years of famine. So they want you to have a 7-year surplus of food storage. They want you to have your own weapons so you can go out and hunt. So that is a bit of the culture behind this person. He was raised in a culture that expects the end times to come any day and to be prepared for at least 7 years of that. And so he was raised in this culture, and that is highly conservative. And they also, the majority of the LDS members support not just the Republican Party, but Donald Trump specifically.
As
So
their Lord and Savior. I've seen
He's-
these T-shirts. Wherever I see these T-shirts, Jesus is my Savior, Trump is my president. Oh my God. Thank you for
yeah,
that. I've always liked that the LDS could be mistaken for LSD, but I have my own particular taste on that. Thank you for that, Brent. Okay, Jenny Gage. We have a definite former cult member here, as we did last week with what was her name? And so, Jenny, Mike Hersh has brought you to us. What do you got to say about all this?
Hi there. I'm, first of all, so happy that you guys had me in this discussion today.
And please explain who you are and why you know this, please.
My name is Jenny, and I was born and raised inside Mormonism as a Christian nationalist, white supremacist, alt-right, trad wife, all the things. That was my life from the time I was born. So I was part of this community. I left the Mormon church 7 years ago, slowly deconstructed, and 2 years ago, as the election was kind of heating up, the pre-campaign stuff was getting going, I realized that I also no longer aligned with MAGA. So I just broke up with Donald Trump just about 2 years ago, and registered as a Democrat, voted for Kamala Harris in this last election. So I think a thing about me that's so unique is that I was leadership. I was deeply devout. I was deeply enmeshed in the alt-right community and in Mormonism for 44 years.
Oh my God.
And then in MAGA, I was 48 and a half years old when I left MAGA. So I've seen that side, and now I've seen the other side. So I kind of, some of my subscribers over on YouTube call me the Rosetta Stone because I speak both languages.
Well, you seem to have aged in reverse. You don't look anywhere near.
It's a Mormon thing. We Mormons, we don't smoke or drink. I do want to correct Brent just a little bit. There is no Mormon doctrine about the 7 years. Members of the LDS Church are encouraged to have a 6 month to 2 year supply of food. So that's, your food, your water, all those different things in case of any type of calamities. And they're not encouraged to have weapons. A lot of members of the LDS Church do own guns because self-reliance is a big deal. So I grew up with, my kids started shooting as soon as they could hold a gun. And my 8-year-old daughter, the year that she got baptized, she also tagged out on her deer license. And I think that was 8 deer at the time. So she was 8 and she took down some of the big bucks. And that's, it's part of our culture of self-reliance. But there is no 7-year thing. And there is no direct Mormon doctrine. It's more cultural, and it kind of ties into that self-reliance. Mormons are still non-violent unless they're attacked.
That's good to
typically.
Well, I have 7 years of salmon that I'm prepared for, but that's a whole other thing. So what led you to leave the MAGA movement, and what can you tell us about it now?
Honestly, I left Mormonism and then Christianity. I'm now an atheist. I left all of that. My ex-husband, MAGA, Donald Trump, all of it for the same reason. I had been conditioned to swim in constant hate and fear. And every day of my life was just, that. It was, I have all these enemies around me, and I have to listen to the divine leader or they're all going to get me. And over time, that just, you get tired of being steeped in hate all the time. And I walked away because I just can't handle it anymore. Going into the last election cycle, having already left the Mormon church, left my community, and having this space where I could finally think for myself and kind of, grow a little bit of empathy. Just listening to people on Fox News and listening to some of my own friends and family who are MAGA as the campaign was getting started, and just hearing the hate. For the first time in my life, I almost had this elevated perspective on it and realized, saw it for what it was. It was hateful fascism. And I think at some point, every human develops a little bit of you've hit your hate capacity. Mine overflowed and I walked away.
That is astounding. Is there any particular moment or instance or insight that prompted this conversion?
I have to say that everything started with me befriending some lesbians as a Mormon, because like all good Mormons, I joined an MLM, and inadvertently,
what's an MLM? I'm sorry. What's
a multi-level marketing company. So I had a little multi-level marketing business.
What were you selling? Do you mean the Madoff syndrome? What were you selling?
Essential oils.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And I didn't sign up this group of people, but some of my friends I had signed up in my Mormon, MLM downline, signed up some lesbians. Now, the Mormon Church and MAGA, they hate LGBTQ. Most Christians do, not all, but a lot of them do. And because these women had signed up as my downline, they were coming to classes at my house, and I got to know them up close and personal. And rather than being the boogeymen that like my whole community had made them out to be, they were in fact the kindest, most compassionate, loving people. Their families were far more functional than, my traditional biblical Mormon family was. And they were making a bigger impact in the world around them than anyone that I saw inside of my religious community. And I didn't leave all this right then, but I became close friends with 6 lesbians, 3 lesbian couples, right? And that was what kind of put the crack in my shelf. One day I went to Mormon church, and there was a lesson that was literally entitled The Evils of Homosexuality. And now that I had befriended the Mormon boogeyman, like I'd always believed that homosexuality was a sin, that you'd be burning in hell if you were a lesbian. But now I had lesbian friends, right? So that day in church, it's like, this doesn't align with the connection with these other humans that I've made. And that day was October of 2018. I walked out of Mormon church, and I have never been back. And I would say that the thing that led me out of all of these things is that I then connected with the boogeymen for all of my groups. I connected with atheists. I connected with liberals and moderates and all kinds of people, and realized that they were beautiful, wonderful human beings. And the hate just no longer worked on me.
Wow, that is a mind-boggling story. Can you tell me very quickly, why do the Christian nationalists hate empathy? To me, that's what makes humans human. I do not understand. I can't begin to fathom that.
because they hate sin. And I'm so glad you asked me that, because I that was my ideology 100%. I hated the word empathy. I didn't like compassion, tenderness. There's a scripture in the New Testament that says that if you are lukewarm, I will spew you out of my mouth. I saw God as this warrior that was trying to, constantly fighting against the evildoers and the sinners. And because I was one of the chosen, because I was one of the elect as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and one of his chosen daughters here on this earth, it was my job to also take up that battle against sin. Inside my MAGA community, my ultra religious Mormon MAGA community, which to me is like the worst of the worst, right? Inside that community, we saw it as our responsibility not just to live our religion. Like, it's not good enough for me not to be a lesbian, and it's not good enough for me not to have an abortion, and it's not good enough for me to like not live with my boyfriend before we get married and all of those horrible sins that'll plunge you straight to hell. It was my responsibility to warn my neighbor. There's another scripture: if you have been warned, warn your neighbor. And we were under command from Mormon leadership to preach the gospel. That's the purpose of the Mormon Church, is to preach the gospel. That's why they
What
spend
happens
billions
when,
of dollars on missionaries.
well, what happens when they preach the gospel and they come to the part where Jesus says, love thy neighbor?
Well, but Jesus also says, I will spew them out of my mouth and I will cast them down into the fire pit. And I guess I would explain it like this. I saw, you're supposed to love the sin, or love the sinner but hate the sin, right? That's a little saying that we had: love the sinner but hate the sin. And for instance, when a loved one of mine came out as gay, I saw it as a hateful act if I enabled him and propped him up and told him, oh, it doesn't matter to me, like, I love you anyway. Because if I wasn't preaching to him about the evil of his ways, then I was not showing love. It's a really twisted mindset that I really haven't seen inside of any other religion, philosophy, or ideology. The concept that only by forcing God's commands on everybody, whether they believe in your God or not, are you acting in love, because it's a hateful act to permit sin. And that is exactly the root of toxic empathy. When you hear Charlie Kirk and these other people, I talked about toxic empathy all the time. When I talked about it, what I meant was, by enabling and accepting sin, by throwing my arms around this family member who just came out as gay, I'm actually showing hate, because I'm not purifying him and converting him back to Jesus.
Oh my God. I will say, I've said this before. I taught religious and cultural diversity at a Lutheran school,
Oh,
which you can see behind me in Columbus, Ohio. And I had a gay Unitarian minister come, and this guy knew scripture inside and out. And he said that the Bible, there's nothing in the Old or New Testament against lesbianism, that there are things you can, and then he went on to say there was nothing against homosexuality against men either. My Lutheran students I was there 14 years. The only time I ever saw them get agitated and stand up and start yelling is when he said the Bible did not condemn homosexuality. So I don't get it, How can the Catholic Church, which went celibacy for priests strictly for financial reasons, the Pope who declared priests should be celibate was concerned about women, wives of priests, claiming property. That's what it was all about. And how could the Catholic Church, who's molested young children for a millennium, now be so angry at gay marriage? Well, I guess it's starting to soften now with
well, I'll
France.
tell you, they have to have a boogeyman. That's how and why. There's got to be
Geez.
a boogeyman. There's got to be the out group. Otherwise, you have nothing to be afraid of, and you have no reason for the church. My partner, by the way, is Lutheran, and he's the type of Lutheran where there's, gay pastors and women have all the rights and everything. So I know that there
Right.
are certainly Christian sects that.
Well, he belongs to the Lutheran Church of Our Lady of Perpetual Responsibility, as you'll remember from. But anyway, Mike, you're fantastic, Janine. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much for being with us. Mike Hersh, then
Yeah, thank
Nikki,
you.
and then Mimi, please.
Jenny,
Mike.
thank you so much for your perspectives. And it's really eye-opening because a lot of us have not had enough conversations with people with your background. So we're making guesses, maybe this, maybe that. So thank you for coming here and telling us exactly from the inside what you've experienced, because there's no substitute for that. And the reason I invited you to join us was, well, first of all, you're amazing and brilliant.
Thank you.
Secondly, it really resonated when you said that you went from thinking that Trump was fighting the same war that you, like he was on your side. He was the leader in an important war, and you were going to support him. And you've heard different things. You were like, okay, locker room talk. Okay, we can overlook that. But then all of a sudden, one thing went too far, and you realized that Trump was using the same tactics of abuse and control that you had experienced in your own life, and you realized that he was an abuser, and
Yes.
in his ties with others like Epstein and Maxwell. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then also if you could talk to us about the Denim Revolution, which I think is awesome as well.
Thank you for asking about the Denim Revolution. I'm hoping this catches on. I've had people emailing me already this morning that they've emailed
That's
their
denim,
people.
Denim, as in blue jeans, right?
It's America, like blue jeans are us. So to answer your question, first of all, and thank you so much for, Mark, it's so nice for you to reach out. I've really enjoyed getting to know your platform for the first time and excited to follow you guys further. But I think that the biggest thing that led me to deconstruct Donald Trump, and first of all, let me say that, yes, I had heard the locker room talk, the whole grab him by the pussy. I knew about Stormy Daniels and all kinds of stuff, and I still supported him because I came from a religious organization that overlooked all kinds of crimes. I had been the victim of things that I probably can't talk about on any platform from the time I was a child. And those men then would give that all to Jesus, and Jesus would wave his magic wand and make it go away. And those people were, happy, and their, victims forgave them and all of that stuff. So that was just normal to me. And also being Mormon, our founder had 39 wives, some of them 14-year-old girls. And I just saw all of the stuff that Trump had been engaged in as Satan tempting the man that he knew was going to be the future president of the church, right? So it's like, yeah, of course, like Trump has this mission. God has put him here on earth so that he can lead America into greatness. And
Toward the bathroom or the kitchen?
Whoever that is, got to mute. Okay. Go ahead.
And so, yeah, like when that came out, it's like any of the journalists even that released that stuff, like Access Hollywood, people that release that, it's like they're fighting for Satan. They're on Satan's side because they're fighting against the Lord's future president. Why was he the Lord's future president? In my eyes, because he was a Republican. The Democrats are baby killers and they're gay. So, of course, I wouldn't vote for them, right? So I always saw anything that was launched against Trump as Satan's minions launching a battle against the chosen. But none of that stuff swayed me. I was still true to Trump. But then really, like, again, befriending the boogeymen, having wonderful lesbian friends who loved me despite the fact that I was this horrible homophobic Mormon girl, like they still embraced me and loved me and supported me and befriended me. That was obviously the key. But then the second thing was I started to have some professional cult deprogramming with Stephen Hawson's group, with some other professionals that help work with people. And I pioneered ex-Mormon TikTok way back during the pandemic as one of the very first ex-Mormon content creators on TikTok. And that gave me this vast network of other people that were transitioning out of cults, some of them horrendous cults, the Children of God cult, and then other Mormons and evangelicals and Jehovah's Witness and Scientologists and things like that. And I had so much professional education into cult tactics. And I think that isn't education always the answer to everything. Like, don't read books and don't talk to experts, or else you're going to be too smart for the cult programming. As we came into the election, I think that I did start to recognize, like, I couldn't deny that Donald Trump is a divine, charismatic leader who has all of the answers, right?
I've heard many words associated with Donald Trump, but divine has never been one of them.
Well, that's how he positions himself, and that's how the cult props him up. He is not. But I started to recognize that within my MAGA movement, that's what we were posturing him as. And I started to recognize the in-group and the out-group, and the isolation and the echo chambers and all of the behavior control, and even the way that the women look within MAGA. Like, we all have the long lustrous locks and all the little blonde kids running around were all white. I started to recognize all of those things of the cult, and it's like, oh shit. So then when Donald Trump started to say things like, you know, the immigrants in New Jersey are eating the dogs and the cats, and Kamala Harris is the despicable witch and all that stuff, I was almost immune to it just because of the recognition, the awareness, and the understanding of cult tactics.
Unbelievable.
So, I don't know, just in a nutshell.
We have 90 people listening to you, as well as those
Well,
on.
hello. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Well, here's Mimi German to give you the latest from
Hey, Mimi.
a Jewish girl from Philadelphia.
Hey, Jenny.
Who now lives in Oregon.
I am a lesbian fan now of you. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your story.
It's the lesbians. They're going to change the world, Mimi.
So I have a question for you. I live in the wilderness now and in Oregon, and there are many people here, they're ranchers, who are ex-Mormons. However, they are MAGA, which is whatever that is, right? Like, that is what it is. We are all friends. I make it my business to bring anybody in as long as the language is that there aren't just grotesque things being said in my presence. I won't tolerate certain things, but
protect your mental health.
Yeah, but my question to you is: these are ex-Mormons, and they're like two of my good friends here, who are, one of whom is ex-Mormon, the other isn't religious. Both are very can be pro-gay. They each have gay members of their families, you know, in their families. But the rest of their mentality, aside from hating Mormonism, is completely down the MAGA train. So my question to you is, how can I, like you mentioned deprogramming, you know, how can I talk to them to help them see that glomming on to a hateful person like Charlie Kirk, whoever, you know, Trump, isn't helping their lives or anything like that? I'm just at a loss for how to communicate anything that you've just said, other than to share this video, which I will, with them, of you, because I think that they'll appreciate that, but I don't think that they'll be able yet to appreciate most of what you're saying.
And Jenny, make sure to put your contacts in the, you know, you've picked up a great ally here with Mimi, who is really a world leader, and I'm sure there are many others. So we're really glad to have you with us. Go ahead and please answer what she said.
Thanks. And everybody can find me over on Life Take Two on YouTube right now. I'm Life Take Two, and I'm Life Take Two because my whole entire life came to an end and started completely over. So got rid of the church, the husband, all of the ideology, even with my shoes, my dog. I was homeless. Like, I literally like metamorphosized. The phoenix got burned, and here I am. So Mimi, that's such a great question. And that's what a lot of people come to me for. I think that most people right now that are following me over on YouTube have MAGA friends, family member, and the ultra radicalized ones, right? Not just someone who like, oh yeah, I didn't even vote for Trump, but I like him type of people, but the radical ones who are like out in the sticks in Idaho prepping for the Lord to come back. They're trying to figure out how to sway their minds. Follow the knitting cult lady. That would be my number one advice for everybody. Knitting Cult Ladies, a personal friend of mine. She's another content creator. She has some incredible books. She has one coming out right now about the cult of America. I think it releases in November. And her first book, Uncultured, is phenomenal. And it's a lot of the reason why I was able to deconstruct. Because what usually happens is when you leave one cult, then you're going to jump back into another cult. So I left the Mormon church a week later. I was in this evangelical church, and it was next level insane. And I spent the next 4.5 years just replacing the Mormon cult with the Christian cult, and maybe in some ways going even more hardcore. And that all abruptly came to an end 2 years ago. I broke up with Jesus. I broke up with Donald Trump. I broke up with everybody. And it was an abrupt transition. But I was able to break up with all of those people because of the cult deprogramming and different things in my life. But yeah, your ex-Mormon friends and neighbors, like, they can leave the Mormon church, but they've been programmed and indoctrinated their whole life. And they still see, now Joseph Smith isn't real, but maybe Jesus is, but maybe Jesus isn't even real. But white people being superior is still real, and this is, you know, America's still
That's where it's
colonist
at,
land.
Jenny. That's exactly that. Exactly.
But
And
it's
so
still
me,
white
I
people.
get deconstructed because my TikTok followers bullied me. So I'm on TikTok and I'm reaching 8 million people a month, and my face is out there, and I'll say stuff, and I don't know I'm racist, but I'll do a video and I have like 5,000 people who are commenting and saying, Jenny, you're racist. And so then I had to like go back to my therapist and go back to my cult deprogramming people and be like, am I racist? I don't feel like I'm racist. So just being a social media content creator, I got bullied from thousands of people who helped me correct my bad ideologies. Your friends and family there in Oregon just haven't had that. They haven't had the outside input. They probably don't have the therapy. They haven't read and educated themselves enough to actually deconstruct, and they've replaced the old cult with the new cult. And it feels comfortable. It's coming from a place of fear. America's in chaos. The world is in chaos. And clinging to the seemingly most powerful man in America and, you know, his followers with MAGA and Donald Trump makes them feel safe. And that's an expected outcome of leaving Mormonism, because your whole world's in chaos. You've lost your Mormon community. You've lost Jesus and Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon. So they'll probably dig in deeper. So I would start a little book club, and I would get Knitting Cult Lady Daniela's first
Spell
book. I
that way.
believe
Is this knitting?
knitting knitting cult
Okay.
lady, knittingcultlady.com, and I do tons of videos with her. So I just sat down with her 2 weeks ago. She's my cult expert. She's an actual cult expert. She spent years in the Army. She was a highly ranked soldier, and she was also part of the Children of God cult, which was a horrifying sex cult. So she was part of a cult that, I mean, I think was even worse than Mormonism in so many ways. And then she left that, and she was actually a cult expert. She has training into cults. So she's, you know, I'm an expert from the inside out. She's an actual witch college and learned about cult
Wow.
and mind control and high demand groups. So she is considered one of the leading, people with expertise over brainwashing, high demand religions, mind control in America. So
Well,
I send everybody to
make
her.
sure that your 8 million followers are educated to leave the cult of nuclear power, because
Right.
that's another.
Yeah, the
Because
Culting of
the
America right
cult.
there. That's coming out soon. Sign up for it. I
Oh
think I
my
have
God! Look at that.
I have
Wow.
500,000 followers, but I reach 2 to 8 a month. So I only have about 500,000 followers
Well,
between my
that's enough.
platforms. So
That's plenty.
yeah, so
500,000.
Daniela, like if I had friends and family that were MAGA, I would start a book club. And Mimi, you're actually doing my first step of my Denim Revolution. The step number 1 is to get out and meet your neighbors. It's literally just know your neighbors and rebuild your tribe. Because humans, when you meet face to face, we don't ask each other, are you Republican or Democrat? Did you vote for Trump or RFK or, Elvis Presley's ghost? We don't ask those things face to face. So you're doing the first step right now. You're getting to know your neighbors, you're connecting them in. You just don't know that down the line, they're not going to think twice about some of the hateful things that they may vote in, because they know you, because they're connected to you. But Daniela, start a book club, say, hey, we're gonna do this book club, and they can read one MAGA book 1 month, and the next month you just sneak in Knitting Cult Lady and listen to her podcast, hop on her TikTok lives. She is so helpful with knowing how to combat some of the cult things and just plant little seeds. And I will say too that often people are afraid to reach out to those Christian nationalist, white supremacist friends of theirs. And I wish that anyone had reached out to me when I was the Christo-fascist, white supremacist, Mormon trad wife and tried to reach me. I wish that some of my friends and family that were, I don't know, atheists or more like, the light Lutherans that weren't so hateful, just some of my neighbors that were more normalized, I wish that they had built those connections with me sooner and helped me see that I was steeped in hateful ideology.
I think this is one reason why the cult the right wing hates gay people so much is because there's so many of them, and they're such effective ambassadors. I mean, gay people are any different than anybody else except whatever. So, clearly the lesbians had a huge impact on you, and that's why the right wing fears them so much. It's just a small explanation.
Also, the right-wing men are afraid that they're accidentally going to date a trans woman, and then they'll go to hell for having gay sex. So that's why
Oh
they
my
want to
God,
just get rid of all
I
trans.
never
And
thought
that's
that.
firsthand conversation. That's like, I've had boyfriends who've like told me like, oh, I just hate cross-dressers and trans people because yeah, like I could end up on Tinder and date one of them and then have gay sex and then I'm going to hell. So
God, that's mind-boggling. We had someone else. Dave Saltman, you're next. Go ahead, please, Dave.
Hi,
Jenny, I
Dave.
just want to thank you. That's
Jenny,
all.
very,
Thanks,
And
Mimi.
you know, you've met Mimi German, but you guys got to be in touch. Mimi's extremely powerful, Jenny. So take care. Go, Dave
So glad we
Saltman,
could
please.
connect. Hi, Dave.
Yes.
hi, Jenny. Fascinating, beyond description. I'm curious. I once had I'm going to call it the pleasure and certainly the novelty of spending a lot of time with Mormons, including the president of the Mormon Church. And
How?
I'm going to tell you, and also some members of the Council of 12, I think it's called, the next step down. Now, correct me if I've got this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's right because it came direct from them. The president of the Mormon Church is considered a divine being. That's correct?
Yes,
right?
yes. He was, the president of the church was called to be the prophet in his past life, in the pre-existence, and he was anointed before he was even born that he would become, the sitting president of the church. He is a divine being. He's the only one on the earth, according to my formal beliefs, that holds all of the keys of the true gospel of Jesus Christ and who has kind of like, that direct phone access straight to him. The prophet speaks to God, and I believed that he saw him face to face and could dialogue with him whenever he wanted to.
You just said you believe that he saw him face. Do you still
Believed.
believe that?
No, believed. Yeah, I believed
And
past.
obviously you grew up with this belief, and so did all of your friends and cohorts in the Mormon Church. How do you shake off a belief like that?
Again, lots of therapy and a lot of just no contact with religion. Once I finally left Christianity, I just turned off all religious. I don't listen to even my secular Buddhist podcast. I don't go to church. I spend time hiking, and I've just reconnected with reality, I guess. I replaced religion with science. And
Were there nagging doubts? I mean, something like that. It's like I have to believe my father was not my father or something like this. I can't comprehend how that was.
It's when
Yeah.
LDS turned to LSD. That's no, go ahead.
I had so many friends when I left the church who congratulated me. They're all like, high five, Jenny, now you've woken up and you've seen the light. Well, first of all, I went right into Christianity and I just joined another cult. So it wasn't that big of a transition, but it's actually not a happy time. When you have a faith crisis, that's what most people call it.
Yeah.
It's so unsettling. It's like when I was being taught that, how to walk and talk and hold a spoon and tie my own shoes, I was also being taught Joseph Smith restored the gospel, and one day you will die and go to the celestial kingdom, which is right past planet Kolob, where Elohim and all of his wives live. And like, that was my reality. The sky is blue, the grass is green, and the Book of Mormon is true. Childhood indoctrination is so dangerous. I actually have a bill that I was trying to get in front of Congress that now with Donald Trump will never happen, an anti-childhood indoctrination protection bill, because when you're infused with those ideas from birth, I was a toddler being taught this stuff, it's very difficult for you ever to find your own way in the world. And if you leave it, then it's grieving. So yeah, no, I lost my faith and had that faith crisis, and it was horrifying. And that's actually why I'm called Life Take Two, because I tried to end my life. It was so unsettling that I had an almost effective suicide attempt, and
Oh God,
lost. It's
God
incredibly
you're
unsettling.
Let me one other question I have from this experience. They told me that basically what happened, I was always curious as to what was happening inside the Mormon churches, inside the buildings. You don't see crosses on these buildings. There's not a single image of Jesus that I saw. There's no crosses, whereas Christian churches are all kinds of crosses everywhere. Jewish temples are full of stars of David and whatnot. There's the only symbol, I think it's an image of Joseph Smith, right?
Well, it's Angel Moroni. I actually have one back here. I can't reach it, but I have one behind me. Yeah.
So
he's the angel of the restoration.
But let me get to my question. I was told that inside the church is basically what goes on in there is you are praying for the souls of the dead, that you're converting them or trying to convert them to Mormonism. Is that correct?
So you're talking about the temples. There are church buildings, the meeting houses where members meet on Sundays, and they just they do their Mormon worship. So inside those temples,
the temples,
I have videos on that. And for any of your viewers who are really curious to know what happens inside the temples, I have another content creator friend named New Name Noah. You can find him on YouTube, and he put hidden cameras on and went inside the Mormon church or inside the Mormon temples, and he videoed what happened in there.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, he's really gutsy. His name is Mike. He's a friend of mine.
Okay.
This weekend, my husband and I my partner and I were sitting at a little restaurant here, and a whole group of 12, 13, 14-year-old boys came in. Their hair was wet. They were in suits and ties. And Kevin was like, are these Mormons and why are they wet? Well, they were wet. I asked him, did you guys just come from the temple? They had just come from the temple where their youth group had performed baptisms for the dead. So inside the Mormon temples, there's two things that happen. First of all, you take out your own oaths and covenants. So you go in and you do your initiatories and you do your wedding, which is called a sealing, and your endowments and all kinds of different ordinances for yourself. But then to keep you coming back, the Mormon prophet had this genius idea to have you do work for the dead. So I believed as a member of the church that if somebody had lived, my grandma, I did my grandma's work. If somebody had lived and never joined the Mormon church, the only way for them to ever get to the celestial kingdom and live with God again was if they had that baptism through the authority of the Mormon priesthood, and then had all of their endowments and all of the temple ordinances. Otherwise, they'd never go to heaven. So you can do that by proxy. My grandma died. I got to go to the temple and I did her baptism. I was baptized for my dead grandma. I got to do her wedding, her sealing to my dead grandpa. I got to do all of her ordinances in her name so that she could be released from spirit prison and go to Mormon heaven, which is the celestial kingdom.
my God.
So
This is the reason.
it's proxy work for the dead. So your grandmas are getting baptized by Mormons right now. They do extractions, and literally bajillions and bajillions of people have had their temple work done so that they have that Mormon baptism.
Listen, we're going to continue this next week or the week after. The woman I want you to be on with is Andra Watkins. She comes from this, she's not a Mormon, they come from a fundamentalist Christian background. The question I want to answer, and we'll do it when you come back, is that how does the following of basically a peace-loving hippie named Yeshua, who became Jesus Christ, turn into billions of people in cults that are based on hate? I have absolutely no comprehension. I want to do that in the future.
Please have me back to talk about that. I'm actually writing a new Bible right now. I'm an atheist, woke, feminist, bisexual, crazy girl. And
you're saying that's the point. So
I'm halfway through a rewrite of the record.
Well, check out the one that Thomas Jefferson wrote.
I've read it and read it.
Andra Watkins. Dave Saltman, by the way, has a tremendous history in major media. That's how he met that guy. So
David, you have to reach out to me and tell me the full story. I have to hear the full story.
Okay. I also met several members of the Council of 12.
I need to know which ones. I need all the tea.
More important, he met Woody Hayes, but that's a whole other story. So listen, Jenna, you'll be in touch with David and with Mimi, and we'll have you back in a week or two with Andra Watkins. This has been absolutely fascinating. So have 86 people with us.
Jenny can do it. Jenny, are you available in a week or two to come back? Because we didn't really get into the Denim Revolution.
We didn't get into the Denim Revolution, and the Denim Revolution has begun. Can we start the Denim Revolution by just one final thought? President Trump and President Vance, or Vice President Vance, by engaging in hate speech that has led to violence and all kinds of stuff towards people like myself. I've spent the whole entire weekend with harassment and threats, etc. And I know people who've had some real life hate happen to them. Citizens can engage in hate speech. That's fine. That's protected. But the president and the vice president cannot. It's impeachable. So we'll talk about the Denim Revolution another time. In 1989, obviously, the Velvet Revolution was effective. But first of all, this week, get in there, find your senators, email them, and ask them for President Trump and J.D. Vance to be impeached for hate speech towards their own citizens, because it's
we'll tell them We will
So,
tell them you sent us. Absolutely.
okay.
You'll be back with Andra Watkins in a week or two. We'll set it up. It's been a fascinating time. Still have 87 people with us. Thank you very much, Jennie
Thank
Gage.
you.
And
Yeah,
I
all
will
of you
go.
reach out to me too. You can find my email and stuff. I'm trying to keep up with everything. And am I busy? I'm completely booked out for the next 3 months, but I have things canceled all the time. And I would love to dive on with you guys, jump back in here again
We
anytime.
will
So
love to have you.
I'll make something happen. I'll bump somebody to talk with you. So
And
you guys are amazing.
I will prepare for my 7 years of salmon. Okay, thank you very much, Jennie. We really appreciate it. And wow, people, that was an amazing hour. And when you're on with Andra Watkins, it will be even more. And you'll be interviewed by Dave Saltman, who met your guy. So there you go. Okay, thank you so much. We're going to jump out now. We had some people waiting, and then we're going to get into the energy issues. But Jonathan Beard, you've been with us for a full hour. I know you had some stuff. Jennie, again, we love you. Thank you so much for being with us. And be sure to reach out to Mimi and to David and to others. Okay, Jonathan Beard, did you want to jump in? And then we're going to go with Howie Hawkins. Going to talk about Ukraine, radiation, nuclear radiation and health and all that. And I do want to say one term above all that you used, Jennie, really describes Donald Trump, and that's abuser. And that is a term that we need to keep in our mind. Jonathan Beard, go ahead, and then we'll go with Howie Hawkins.
All right. First of all, just wow. And Jennie, thank you so much. We love you. You have 500,000 viewers, followers now. We'll have 500,000 plus one as soon as this meeting's over, because I'm going to jump on YouTube and learn some more from you. So thank you much. And whoever put me after her on the agenda, to hell with you. How do you follow something like that?
Well, we can go to Howie Hawkins and come back to you. Howie's got a lot of experience doing that. Go ahead. You want to go to Howie and then come back?
No, here we go. Here we go. We'll buckle up and do this. I've got a PowerPoint for you, if you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. And let me try to set up my computer. Okay, so my name's John Beard. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. And a couple years ago, I was watching the news, and Matt Getz and Margaret Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan, Lauren Boebert, one of those idiots was on. I don't remember which one. And they were spouting the nonsense. And I honestly felt like throwing my slipper at the TV, right? And then I thought, damn, John, that's such an old man reaction. You always talk about leaving the world a better place for your kids, but here you are sitting on the couch while they're out spreading that stupidity. And so I've always been active in local community and activists who supported statewide and national initiatives, but never led at that level. And really called myself on the table saying, why is this idiot more influential in the world than me? And so that says more about me than it does about that idiot. I started asking, would my father be proud of me? And, my father was a Tuskegee Airman, and he did for his times, when he was ready to go and fight Nazis. Didn't go to Europe, but he was ready to go learn how to fly planes. And, am I carrying my family name right? And eventually came saying, I need to step up and be the man for my times that my father was for his. So here I am walking my father's footsteps, organizing today's Red Tails, which is a legacy of our father's generation. So we're still fighting Nazis, but now on the home front. And hopefully forever, not by slinging bullets, but by using the constitutional design to make them laughably irrelevant for our children. I want to talk to you about the America Forward initiative that I'm leading and its logical framework. So I've got 3 objectives for that. First, I want you to understand it. Second, I hope at the end you'll believe that with work and the right partners engaged, it's doable. And third, I want for you to support the movement. And support, I'm going to define that to mean you've got an initial level of trust in me, and that you believe through developing partnerships we can follow the framework, resolve the stated problems, and improve America. And importantly, support would mean for you to be comfortable enough to help facilitate connections and partnerships within your peer groups, that you would feel comfortable introducing me to people you know, because this is something that's way bigger than me, but it's not bigger than me and the people I know and the people they know. So talk about me real quick, a little about me, and I'm going to run through this because I know we're got a little bit of time. I'm a girl dad. When my baby daughter was born in 1997, I fell in love with her whole generation. She was by my side the whole time. There on the right-hand side, that's Tom Leach, the former HUD state director, giving me a certificate. I ran a nonprofit, and we did so well. The White House put together a community empowerment conference and came to Columbus. So it was Vice President Gore, 5 cabinet officials, and 1,200 community development professionals from across the country. So that's Tom giving me a certificate. And, my daughter there at my side, and her kitty boo-boo tucked under my elbow. We did community redevelopment work. That's us with me with all the mucky mucks of Columbus doing a ribbon cutting at a building that we had just rehabbed. My little son, Herschel Craig, was supposed to cut that ribbon. Herschel's a state senator. He handed my son the scissors and said, you cut them. So that's my son there cutting it. Me and my daughter at President Obama's first inauguration. I coached Little League and then ran Little League. These kids are now 40 years old, 40 plus. That's me with some other 20-somethings. And together, we became the only group of citizens to put a citizen-initiated charter amendment on the Columbus ballot. My son played ice hockey. And, so I'm around a lot of white folks. He's around a lot of white folks there. My daughter, and my daughter played basketball. I love this picture. This is how I see that generation. First of all, my son playing ice hockey. He got, he scored a goal in one game, and as he was skating off the ice, one of the kids behind him on the other team used the N-word on him.
Jonathan, can you focus on the point of people getting people to move to? Thank you.
Let me move on. Okay. So here's a summary of the proposal. So with deep concern for the country, understanding the impact of the Constitution's design, and knowing that small vote margins in a handful of states determine the presidency, we reject and defeat white or conservative backlash politics forever by empowering the perspectives and values of the coming, increasingly diverse generations to create a durable leftist center or progressive governing coalition. We do this by organizing, supporting, and guiding a mass migration of young progressives to newly developed, strategically located voting communities in key states across the countries. Such a migration of progressive voters will ensure a MAGA Republican can never again win 270 Electoral College votes needed to become president. When you win states for the presidency, that has implications for Senate control. We saw that in Georgia in 2020, and we saw that in Ohio in 2024. Presidency and the Senate are nomination and confirmation of federal judges, and that creates stability for the road forward. So this is what we're trying to do in summary. Why will this work? So megatrends are forces ripping through society, and after they're ripping through society, will never be the same again. Okay. First thing, small numbers win elections. In 2020, 77,000 votes decided 4 states in their decisive 43 Electoral College votes. And in 2024, it was less than 800,000 votes decided 7 states and 93 Electoral College votes. We've got about 40 million left-leaning adults ages 20 through 35. So we're talking about small numbers determining the presidency. Number 2, there's a housing shortage right now. There are estimates between 4 and 8 million units short of housing. So new homes, this is America and capitalism, new homes must and will be built. The question is, where will they be built and for what purposes? If we leave it as is, they'll be built by rich people to get richer. What we want is for some of the rich people to get richer and to help us win elections. So what we're really looking at here are market-based solutions for sustainability. So when I ran the nonprofit, I ran the HUD-designated Columbus Empowerment Zone. I won a $100 million grant for Columbus. The Tea Party was in power then, and they cut it down to $28 million. Most recently, I was an environmental consultant doing environmental and climate justice work for the US EPA. That was the largest investment in climate change in the history of the world. And the Republicans just cut all those grants and cut the program completely. That's straight out of Project 2025.
So this is a super intriguing concept. Could you please put the links in the chat? I've been informed by HOWIE HAWKins that we have a guest speaker, Svetlana Ramko, it's like 1 a.m. where she is.
So we got to get to her. So Jonathan, the bottom line is, what do you want people to do in 2 sentences, and how do we get in touch with you?
Okay, I will put my email's already in the chat. I'll put the website in the chat too. So one of the things is young progressives have a ton of market power in America through their rent buying power. Okay, it's not the developer that has power; it's the person that pays rent. We're trying to organize progressive issue advocacy organizations because they can speak to their constituents to let them know about this initiative and help to get them to get their constituencies informed and motivated by it. So in summary, that's where I'm going. My information will be in the chat. And again, this is a systemic solution. This is not a program that can be cut. This is not nonprofit. These are market-based, sustainable. This is a business of America moving towards equity.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Jonathan, we'll have you back in a couple of weeks, and you can give us a thumbnail summary. Okay?
Sounds good, Harvey.
Thank you so much. Put your link in the chat. Very much appreciate your time.
Appreciate you.
And
Thanks.
stick with us, okay? Keep
Will
coming
do.
back. Okay, now we're going to go to Howie Hawkins. Howie was the presidential nominee of the Green Party, and he is now doing great work, amazing work with the Ukrainian Greens and the idea of turning Ukraine green. We did hear from Zelensky, the head of Ukraine, that they want to build more nuclear plants, which one of the more horrifying moments in my life. I'm a great supporter of Ukraine in this horrible war against the new Hitler out of Russia. And now Howie Hawkins is breaking this ground to get a green-powered Ukraine. Go ahead, Howie.
Well, we have on Zoom the leading climate activist in Ukraine, Svetlana Romanko, who's the executive director of Razom We Stand, which is a Ukraine-based international campaign to build the international boycott against Russian oil and gas and to rebuild Ukraine and Europe and the world really on the basis of renewable energy. And before the full-scale invasion, Svetlana was the 350.org representative to Ukraine, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. She holds a PhD in environmental, natural resources, land, and agrarian law, and a doctorate in climate change law, climate governance, and climate policy. And she's well known in the climate movement. I saw that when I marched with her at the climate march in New York City in September 2023. I mean, everybody from the former first female president of Ireland, Mary Robinson, to Naomi Klein, Bill McKibben, Vanessa Nakati, the young climate striker from Uganda. And, you know, I really appreciate Svetlana staying up. Due to confusion, she thought we were going to do this an hour earlier. And sleep time is precious because they're having air raids all the time in Ukraine. So, Svetlana, why don't you just start talking about what y'all are trying to do in Ukraine and what's at stake?
Yeah, thanks so much, Howie. It's a really pleasure to join you tonight. And we've met with Howie in Kyiv just a year ago, I guess. We just met in the center of Kyiv to talk. And thanks so much for raising Ukraine issue again and again, even in a very unfavorable political conditions, and as we are seeing right now. And thanks for your kind words on me. I'll just briefly describe what we are doing in Ukraine and broadly and where we are with the campaign, which is ongoing since the early 2022 when over 860 organizations in 60 nations acted against Russian invasion of Ukraine, but mainly towards ending global fossil fuel addiction that feeds Putin's war machine. So we've been run this campaign. What we would say, yes, it was quite successful because it raised a global movement and we were able to deprive Russia about $500 million of fossil fuel profits. But the bad news is that Russia still earns some money and they were able to earn on selling fossil fuels, mainly oil and also gas and LNG, about 1 trillion of euros because they mostly sell it to Europe. And of course, Ukraine suffers. And what is happening right now in Ukraine, it's very much intertwined to our fight against Russia's fossil fuels and fossil fuel companies and all investors, all type of financial services that still do business with Russia and invest in Russian fossil fuels, including infrastructure. So we try to really act at the intersection of energy justice, peace building, and action on climate. While climate and climate crisis now it's been extremely unpopular, we still pursue our vision for the better world. And for Ukraine, our vision is that we want to rebuild Ukraine. When speak numbers powered by 50% of renewable energy by 2030 and by 30% of renewable, by 100% of renewable energy by 2040, which is really ambitious task because I just checked what is happening besides the huge destruction, huge human losses, as you all know, that families terrorized in their homes without knowing of who of them will wake up tomorrow and who will wake up to a new day. basically. And so just to speak on that, the energy, like, and our economy is not doing well. Our energy infrastructure obviously is not doing well because we are again approaching winter, and winter won't be easy for Ukraine and Ukrainians because 90% of our energy infrastructure was being destroyed in the past years by relentless Russian attacks. And as we can see, they just intensified, and there is such a weak action against them. So we've been able to rebuild 9 gigawatts of energy, which is huge, honestly, which is huge, up to 9 gigawatts that we had left from 54 gigawatts that we had before the start of the full-scale invasion. So basically, now this problem raises again because the cost of the war is increasing and the damage mounts as well. And what is the plan for Ukraine? We can't really, honestly, we've been long time collaborating inside of Ukraine as a green movement, trying to push for ambitious energy and climate policies, even now during the war, because we still hope we will be able to win, and we believe we will, but it gets very difficult, as we can see, especially with the lack of support of all kind from the US. And but still, environment needs our protection and climate, and we still try to focus on the topics we've just campaigned for a long time. So green movement in Ukraine is being alive and like relatively well, but at the same time, of course, rebuilding of Ukraine on the clean energy is not a top priority of the government, as we can say. So our task, our main campaign goal in Ukraine is to make the clean, fair, decentralized, affordable, renewable energy really available for local communities and for the people who live in extreme poverty, because in Ukraine, it's this problem only exacerbated, and we have like 33% of population of Ukraine who still remains in Ukraine and who lives for $1.5 per day, which is extreme poverty. And this is terrible. These people must have available energy, cheap energy, renewable energy, because oil and gas is not cheap. Besides of it funds the war and funds all kind of torture and violence against Ukrainian citizens. And everyone in Ukraine, I believe, everyone who is able to actually to see the news, to understand what's happening inside of the country, everyone truly believes that gas is not good. And actually, everyone, if you ask average citizen on the street, if the gas is good, if you would like to keep gas, they would say, no, we won't, because the bloody gas from Russia funds the war against us. Everyone knows that, and everyone now knows that fossil fuels are bad in Ukraine. But we can't make this leapfrog transition in the conditions of war. So what we're doing in Ukraine, we work with the local cities. We have a network of 26 cities which develops their renewable energy plans for the local communities. And we try to match them with investors, including from the US. We made the visit last year where we talked to Export Credit Bank and DFC at the time of the President Biden, which was like when the funding was more available. So some green projects became available for local communities, and they will benefit really populations that has no other access to energy, which is really good. But it at the same time gets extremely difficult to continue because there are opportunities to install renewable energy, but there is no resources for that, including financial resources. And Ukraine budget deficit is 2 trillion, over 2 trillion of Ukrainian hryvnias, which is I didn't put it because I just saw this news. I didn't put it in US dollars, but I believe the number is billions. It's huge. especially for the country at the fourth year of the full-scale Russian invasion. So this means we will need to find alternative sources to provide this energy relief to the local communities, especially during the winter, during the cold times at winter. And actually, speaking about the governmental priorities, there has been a survey that proved just recently, our partners did that survey, which proved that government doesn't keep clean energy on the top of their agenda, and they don't prioritize the clean energy projects among other projects, because there are so much necessarily needs to rebuild the housing for the people. Every night in Kyiv, there is another residential building destroyed, and people lost their homes, even in the capital city. And basically, what I am trying to say is that rebuilding is a far away from us, as like more than we think. So the first task is to deprive Russia of fossil fuel profits, and we work in Europe for now to ban Russian gas and LNG fully, but at the same time we try to support the solidarity movement in the US, because US wants to replace this LNG with LNG gas produced with the harm for the local communities in the US.
So one thing that attraction, I did hear along the way somewhere that Zelensky was talking about building new nuclear plants in Ukraine, which is patently insane. And of course, you've got Zaporizhia, 6 atomic reactors that were in Ukraine. They were Russian built, that now have been taken over. At one point, the Russians accused Ukraine of attacking the Zaporizhia reactors with a drone, which was not credible. But the Russians actually attacked Chernobyl, and the thing over the sarcophagus with a drone. So can you tell us how, and thank you for this presentation, very, very moving. Can you tell us what is the actual situation? Is the Ukrainian government at all thinking about building new nuclear plants, and what will happen with the ones that now exist?
Well, they might think of these plans, but I wonder where they will be able to find the funding for those nukes, because they are hugely expensive. And the only sense it makes to keep in operation those nuclear stations that have already been built and have not been yet put into conservation. They're still in operation. But as we know, there are not many of them left in Ukrainian jurisdiction, because Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which was one of the main operating, it's been seized from the very first days of Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and it's not yet back into Ukrainian authorities. So we don't know what is happening here, and there are huge threats coming in all the time. News that Russia disconnected the power supply to Zaporizhia, it's going to explode. That Russians, they fired all stuff in Zaporizhia and it's going to explode. You know, every Ukrainian family has a suitcase. We used to have a suitcase with a stupid selection of medical treatments that won't help at all if nukes explode at that Zaporizhia power station. So, but every family used to have that since the beginning of the war, when there were some news about Russians wanting to use a nuclear as another weapon of war. So, actually, having had experience of Chernobyl, and I am me in person, I was 7 when Chernobyl exploded, and I remember everything very well. So I don't think that the government will receive the support, especially from those who remember what that was, for constructing them. And civil society movement is still strong in Ukraine, and we can oppose the government if they are not doing the right thing.
Well, of course, also renewables would be less vulnerable to attack than oil, gas, or nuclear. And if every community, I understand that the Russians did attack some windmills in Ukraine. Is that true?
This is true, and they attacked the solar power plants, which were mostly in southern eastern Ukraine, and many of them got damaged. Even one colleague of ours who had really built a solar power plant, it got it all destroyed, and what's not been destroyed was seized by upon seizing by Russians. It was taken to Russia, basically stealing all those solar panels that were not damaged or destroyed. Yeah.
Well, this is
Can
the
you,
first instance in world
Svetlana,
history. This is the
you could
first
turn,
instance in world history where a nuclear power plant has been taken over by another country. That would be Zaporizhia. There are 6 reactors there. And it seems to me, at least in self-defense, that maybe Ukraine can make an alliance with Germany, who has very strong solar and wind resources, to try and rebuild your power structure in partnership with them. Someone was asking a question, please.
yeah, Svetlana can turn her camera on if she wants to. She's capable of doing that, whether she
Okay.
knows that or not.
All right, so this is a unique, I don't think I mean, this is a fantastic presentation, Svetlana. If you can give us any writing whatsoever through Howie, we will send it around through various channels, because very few people are thinking in terms of converting Ukraine to renewables. It would be a very big deal. And of course, this is in many ways an energy war, right? I mean, Putin wants all the energy resources of Ukraine from himself. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, it might seem correct, but it's not a main issue why he attacks Ukraine. He just wants our nation to be destroyed, and then he will progress into the European territories, as we've seen already happening to Poland, and Polish are very scared by the drones flying over the governmental buildings as well. So I would say, but yeah, I know what you talk about, because yes, indeed. It was leaked that President Trump and Putin were trying to make a discussion about how to make business on the occupied territories of Ukraine, where there are significant reserves of energy transition minerals and rare minerals in general. So it was even being said that in Ukraine, we know that there was some sort when America registered its businesses in the occupied territories, and there is a peace agreement, and then they supply the energy transition minerals to the world market, collaborating with Russia. We don't have proofs to that, but it would be horrible if this agreement would take place, especially as a part of this not happening peace agreement with Russia. And actually, the worst thing is that no one can check what is happening on the occupied territories of Ukraine, Donbass, including part of Zaporizhia, Luhansk. And we are not yet sure. We just only know that people don't have water there. They just don't have water, neither for sanitation nor for drinking, and they are deprived of very basic needs of a shelter, water. Yeah, it is.
Wow, amazing, Svetlana, amazing. Howie Hawkins, thank you for bringing Svetlana to us. And do you want to jump in and speak, please?
Yeah, I want to say a few words about what Trump is doing with Putin regarding the oil and gas business. The so-called minerals deal was really about oil and gas more than it was rare earth minerals. You know, the Ukrainians in the Black Sea and in southeastern Ukraine, there are gas fields. There are oil and gas pipelines crossing Ukraine from Russia to Europe. And the minerals deal is a way for U.S. corporations to get some of the profits from that oil and gas extraction and from the pipelines. And then when Putin and Trump met in Alaska, they talked a lot about oil and gas. And in fact, on August 5th, in the lead up to the summit that they had in Alaska, Putin issued a decree raising the allowable greenhouse gas emissions standards in Russia. And then on the 15th, the day of the summit, he issued a decree opening Russia back up to Exxon and to other Western corporations to get back into the oil and gas business there. And it turns out the Wall Street Journal reported on August 26th that Exxon had been in secret negotiations with the Russians from the point that that Trump got inaugurated. And then this last week, Trump unilaterally lifted sanctions on Belarus. First it's with the airlines, but our envoy there is saying that this is going to lead to normalization of relations, which means Belarus becomes the front door to trade with Russia from the West, including military components, which they're having a hard time getting now. So, Trump is really lining up behind Putin and against Ukraine. And I think those are just some of the things we need to keep in mind. And one more point, Harvey, that you'll be interested in. The Russian oil and gas industry depends, well, first of all, it's a climate bomb, but it's also nuclear madness because they already have 2 reactors on a floating barge in the Arctic Ocean off Siberia, powering oil and gas extraction. And they have 15 more planned. And they're trying to export these things around the world. So you're going to have nukes floating off the coasts of countries. And in the Arctic Ocean, what could go wrong?
That's a nightmare. Svetlana, it's nice to see you now. Do you have anything further to add? It's a mind-boggling presentation from you. I was in Kiev. I was in Kiev when it was still Kiev in 1996 for the 10th anniversary discussion of what happened at Chernobyl. It was horrifying. We talked to many people who had survived and who gotten cancer and people whose families were decimated by the fallout from Chernobyl. And so the idea that Ukraine would ever think of building more atomic reactors, I know that there were 15 before the war, including the 4 at Chernobyl. And to have 6 reactors in a war zone is a global nightmare beyond all expectation.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I just would like to conclude the final points on what needs to be done, because we still have a lot of work to do, and especially in the current circumstances where the pressure on Russia must be tightened. We don't know if it's happening or not, especially on the US side, but what we currently do, we try to advocate for 19 sanction package to impose a total embargo on Russian gas, including LNG, which Europe is not keen to do, but hopefully we will be able to push for this strong demand, which will immediately cut Russia of many billions of profit, and especially of the premium European market. But also we are highly awaiting for this Senator John Graham bone crushing bill on sanctions that is ready, but it's not yet put on the table by the leader of majority. We are highly anticipating this finally happen. Better sooner than later, because Ukraine does every effort to protect ourselves. It gets more difficult every other day. But also we need to dismantle the shadow fleet, both for oil and for gas, because Russia started building the shadow fleet for gas, LNG tankers, and we currently got 26 of LNG carriers, which are 81 in general. We've got them sanctioned by the European authorities and by the UK, but more work needs to be done, obviously. And if we only could lower the oil price cap, which is not the perfect ban on Russian oil, of course, because Russia still flows to the markets, especially to China and India. If we could lower it by 20 or 25 US dollars, it would make a significant difference, because that's the cost of extraction of oil, and Russia would not be able to profit on the oil. But as we've seen, some trade wars are happening on the both sides, and we are not yet sure if the strong oil sanctions will take place. And last point is that the US is a very powerful country still, so we just really believe you will be able, and we wish you to be able to preserve democracy and protect democracy, and also to ban US companies like SLB and others who still supplying, as Howie said, infrastructure for Russian oil fields, because they can't get it nowhere else. just from these highly technological companies which still supply them infrastructure and software and everything.
Well, and in looking at the politics of this, you do have to understand there is a Jeffrey Epstein connection between Trump and Putin. It has to, and not just sex, but also money laundering. And that's a big piece of the overview. Okay, can you take a couple questions? Steve Caruso. Oh, well, Mickey Leader has been waiting the longest. Mickey, is this about Ukraine, please? And then Steve Caruso and Paul Newman.
Yes.
Go ahead, please, Mickey.
I'm wondering, I didn't hear you say it and I didn't know anything about you, but when we were starting to go to the renewable energies, it was a very big thing to talk about geothermal. Because there's so much destruction in Ukraine when you're rebuilding your Marshall Plan, can you build into that geothermal? Because they use it successfully in Iceland and other countries like that have had it for hundreds of years. Maybe that's something that you could talk about. And additionally, what can the average person in the US do to help push this along? I don't know what's happening with Trump, and I'm sure nobody else does. His brain is just crazy.
But what can we do to help, Svetlana? And is there room for geothermal in the discussion in Ukraine?
Yes, there is a room. Like the door started opening slightly for geothermal energy, but the cost and benefit of it still goes under assessment. So it's just on a very early stage of development, I would say. And what the average citizen could do, I would say, to help us to reach out to the audiences where you can, to like I don't know what's possible to demand from the political power in the US, but from my experience, not much you can do right now when the country is under really different kind of threats. But if you follow us, if you support our demands where you can, sign on, try to support Ukraine humanitarian aid and assistance, donating where you can, because this money go to supporting the most vulnerable people, and they will be grateful for that. Just a small human being kind gestures that you can afford would be really appreciated, but also demanding political change and pressure. Of course, the pressure in Putin is the most important thing on the side of fossil fuels.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. Paul Newman, then Heidi, then Steve, and then we'll finish with Howie. Thank you for your time, Svetlana. Paul?
Привіт, Svetlana.
Привіт.
У мене є питання, and that is, what is the percentage of hydroelectric energy that you have in Ukraine?
Дуже дякую за питання. Слава Україні.
Слава.
I was really pleased to hear my language. Thank you so much for speaking such a great Ukrainian and asking me questions in my native language. Hydropower used to make, I would say, I don't have very right numbers in hand, but I can quickly check what's up now. But after Kakhovka Dam was destroyed, the number lowered, of course, but it used to be 43%. So a large share of hydro was producing the energy, but I can check right now and tell you.
You should be in email contact with Paul. And thank you for that. We have Joe Mangano in the wings. Oh, now he's got to go. Go ahead, Heidi, and then Paul. Joe, if you can stay for a couple minutes, I want to introduce you real quick. Go ahead, Heidi, and then we'll go to Steve, Howie, and then we'll go to Joe Mangano if he's still with us. Go ahead. Thank you, Paul. Heidi, is there something quickly you want to say? And then we'll go to Steve and Howie.
Thank you so much for helping us understand this. I'm wondering, is there, I'm aware that in Germany, there was Petra Kelly. I don't know if you're aware who she was, but she helped to bring awareness of the nuclear issues and help to galvanize a movement to help bring it down, the energy movement there. And I'm wondering if there isn't such a leader in Ukraine that's doing that right now. And I thank you for the work you're doing, because I also have been very studied the issue of Ukraine, of Chernobyl, for a long time now.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Yes, there are a couple of people, maybe not that famous, but they are still very proactive in trying to prevent the construction of new facilities of Khmelnytsky nuclear power plant and others. There are a few. And now I have to say Greenpeace Ukraine is really active because they specifically focus on nuclear power, which we don't. We have our just main enemy as the fossil fuels, and we focus on the fossil fuels, but of course we are aware and support where we can. But yeah, there are a few people that lead that, a few organizations that lead that fight against the nukes in Ukraine. And I have to say they quite productively, because if you track this Bulgarian thing, when old Russian-made reactors, useless, were attempted to purchase on our side, on governmental side, for the huge millions and millions. And civil society campaigned hard against this, and we won at the end, and they won at the end, not just because of because yeah, that was a coincidence of facts, but the fight was really strong. And yeah, and this is not happening. Old Bulgarian-owned reactors made in USSR are not going to
Good.
be installed in Ukraine.
Good. You know, I have a car up on blocks in the front yard I like to sell you. I want to introduce very quickly Joe Mangano. Svetlana, you'll be very interested in him. Joe is a pioneer researcher on the health impacts of atomic reactors. And of course, they're still arguing here in the United States that few people, if any, were harmed by the radiation from Chernobyl. Having been to the conference in Kiev in 1996, I know this is definitely not the case. And in fact, there's a study done by 3 Russian scientists who argue that more than 1 million people were in fact killed by radiation from Chernobyl. It was Yablokov and his brother and another Russian, and their findings were published in the US. Very important. I hope you know about this study, because it drives me crazy to hear only a few people were killed by Chernobyl. It's more than 1 million, at least. So Joe Mangano here has been pioneering the research around nuclear reactors in the United States. Joe, do you want to talk about that real quick? And you should connect with Svetlana, because the studies coming out of Chernobyl are extremely important.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be brief, because
Please,
in
go ahead.
15
Go
minutes,
ahead.
I'm due on another,
Okay.
or earlier, another Zoom. I just posted on the chat room and linked to an article that was published 3 days ago. The article was written with a colleague and dear friend of Harvey's, Bob Alvarez, who just passed away a few months ago. The article basically calls for a new national study of cancer near U.S. nuclear plants. In all the years that we've been operating nuclear power plants, there's been only one study. It was done in the 1980s. It was only done at the insistence of Senator Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, and it's basically outdated and needs to be at least updated. It is a huge task to do a full national study, but it's critically important it be done now because of the many proposals out there to build new reactors, to keep old reactors going, and to bring old retired reactors back into operation.
So in the discussion of nuclear power in Ukraine, Svetlana, Joe is critical because he's one of the very few in the United States doing the kinds of studies that would also have to be done in Ukraine. And, as you know, they've suppressed how many people were killed at Chernobyl, and I know they suppressed how many people were killed at 3 Mile Island at the accident in 1979, because I went in there and interviewed people as a journalist. It was horrifying. As the conference in Kiev was horrifying in 96. So Joe is the key, the linchpin he's one of the very few who has any background in doing these kinds of studies.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more discussion from people and questions from people. But as I said,
okay, we'll have you back. We'll have you back in a week or two.
Could you please? I'd be more than glad to do
your
that.
bulletin article has been published. We've put the link in. You'll come back, and Joe will link you with the Ukrainians, because if they're in fact talking about building nuclear plants, they need to have the studies in place before they move ahead.
Please, yeah, I agree. Please give out my contact information, and I'll be glad to help.
Okay, Svetlana, thank you so much. I very quickly also want to mention we have another great nuclear expert on with us, Carl Grossman, my cohort, like Joe for many, many decades. Carl and I just published a piece today, which we'd like you, if you can, we'll send you the link. Carl and my piece is at Counterpunch, and it's going around the internet. It'll be up at freepress.org, hopefully. Again, talking about the push for nuclear power here in the United States. Svetlana, we will get you the link to this piece. There's Carl. We'll get you the link to this piece as well. And everyone, if you want to take a look, it's a Counterpunch. And it talks about how, the whole regulatory apparatus in the United States, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, plus FEMA, plus the CDC, no one is, there's no safety net here on real nuclear regulation. You would have to ask what's in place in Ukraine. Is there a governmental organization that could possibly monitor the safety of the nuclear reactors in Ukraine, given your wartime situation? So this is the piece that's up at Counterpunch, and Svetlana will send you the link so you'll have an idea. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission was never very credible anyway, and now Carl and I have documented how it's been utterly devastated here. And if discussion of nuclear power surfaces again in Ukraine, you might want to ask who's going to regulate it, and how's it going to be insured? We have no insurance on atomic reactors in the United States. So again, that's a link that we want to make with you in Ukraine, and certainly Howie has a very, very deep understanding of the atomic power energy issue as well. Okay, well, Svetlana, I know it's very late for you. Carl will come back to you if we can, and then someone else had a hand for Svetlana. Is there anything else? Howie, do you want to finish, and then we'll turn it over to Svetlana?
Yeah, I was going to ask her about the constant bombing. I mean, of late, all the refineries are being bombed in Russia by the Ukrainian drones, pipelines, so forth and so on. It's having a great effect. I don't think the American media is paying enough attention to what's going on over there. There's constant stuff on YouTube that's explaining the success of the Ukrainians, but also ExxonMobil. I think Trump has encouraged ExxonMobil to sign on to Russian oil exploration and stuff. I don't know if you know anything about that, but that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Yeah, just a quick note that ExxonMobil has built close ties with Russia, with Putin for many, many years, and they, along with Morgan Stanley, they just basically practically saved Russian collapsing economy after the USSR collapsed. They just saved it with US investments, US money, and of course money into the oil development in infrastructure. So it's not in use. And they remain close friends, receiving medals and exchange with I believe, some lobbyist attempts. But the other side of it is that ExxonMobil still has to run a global business, and for this global business, having supporting the Russia's war in Ukraine is really bad. So that's why they withdrawn, as they say. But they can easily get back again, and we are very much afraid of that, especially when the Arctic, which was also the topic, as we believe, on Alaska, on the summit in Alaska, if these conversations will receive the further development, which we're also afraid, because 80% of Russian oil and gas reserves are being concentrated in the Arctic. We must remember that Arctic is full of oil and gas, and most of this oil and gas really belongs to Russia legally, and and U.S. In the current political leading wants to take a part of it through the ExxonMobil as one of the fossil fuel majors. So it's not impossible. I am also aware that that there could be some another attempts for ExxonMobil and others, and Chevron maybe, to invest into oil and gas in Ukraine, because as Howie said rightly in the beginning, the mineral agreement is covered agreement for oil and gas mainly, and less for the critical minerals, as we believe. And as a less of all for creating a local benefits for Ukrainian people, which will be based on the energy transition, mineral sustainable mining whatsoever.
Thank you for that, Svetlana. Howie, do you want to finish up, and then we're going to move on? And Svetlana, we hope you get to bed and get some rest. You've been very, very effective and very helpful. Go ahead, Howie.
Well, I met Petra Kelly and I've met Svetlana Romanko, and I would say she's the Petra Kelly of Ukraine and should be as famous as Petra Kelly. And I hope it's a quiet night for you and you get a good night's sleep without air raids. Harvey, I think you hit the nail on the head that what Putin has on Trump is the money laundering. And I think Mueller never investigated that because Rod Rosenstein told him not to follow the money. So we really haven't had the full investigation of that. In any case, more evidence of the true Trump-Putin alliance. News today that the U.S. sent 2 military observers to the Belarusian Russian military exercises going on right now. And what kind of signal does that send after Russia just sent drones, over 20, into Poland and half a dozen into Romania? It's it's a Trump-Putin alliance, and that for the people that have this position that if the U.S. is back in Ukraine, then it must be a U.S. imperialist plot. Well, you better revise your thinking, because now Trump and Putin are aligned against Ukraine, and that's something we've got to address in this country.
Is Putin looking for a wider war? I mean, does he want a wider war now?
I don't know. I just had a debate with some Ukrainians about that, and 2 theories. One is he's just probing, testing NATO's defenses. And the other is he's doing it in order to see what he can do. And the other one is it's just basically to see what kind of political response NATO will give and the U.S. will give to those drones.
Svetlana, I hope you'll come back a couple of weeks and get some rest. And I hope you're fine. You very, very good presentation. The connection to Joe Mangano and the health issue on nuclear is important. And Carl is with us on the piece we just put out. But I for one, I see Hitler written all over Putin, and his connections, his ownership of Donald Trump is deeply, deeply disturbing. And I'm totally supportive of Ukraine, which is why I was horrified to hear even a brief mention by Zelensky that they might want to build more nuclear plants. And I'm sure you can take care of that, and we will give you all the support you asked for. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
70,
Bye.
Okay, get some sleep. We seriously, and you'll be back. Thank you, Howie, for bringing Svetlana on with us. And we want to move now with Carl Grossman very quickly. Boy, I mean, geez, what incredible stuff. No wonder I'm completely wiped out after these calls. We still have 70 plus people with us, and Carl Grossman and I have just published with Counterpunch, and it's going to go all over the internet. A piece. I do want to mention, of course, that Joe Mangano is with us, very important player and one of the very few people doing any kind of health research around nuclear power plants. Carl and I talked in this article largely about the assault on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And, you know, how do we bad as it was, there was at least a semblance of regulation of nuclear reactors in this country. That is over. Carl, you know, where do we stand with atomic power now in this country?
Oh, it's well, Trump a few months ago signed a bunch of executive orders to expedite licensing of nuclear power plants and getting more nuclear power in the United States. The orders say, and I'm quoting, expand American nuclear energy capacity from around 100 gigawatts today to 400 gigawatts by 2050. That's 25 years ago. Quadruple, essentially, the number of nuclear power plants in the US. And we quote people who have been in the middle of this. For example, here is Arnie Gunderson under Trump. No, here's Kevin Camps. Nuclear safety is in complete free fall at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Right.
And there is no parachute. Or Arnie Gunderson, who formerly was in the nuclear industry and is now a major opponent of nuclear power. The NRC has always been a nuclear lapdog, not a watchdog, but under the Trump administration's new executive orders, the lapdog has had its teeth removed, its vocal cords cut. It can't bite, it can't even bark, even if it wanted to.
Right. And
bottom line here, it's the few regulations imposed on the nuclear industry actively by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They've gone with the wind. And the future, particularly if we're talking about quadrupling, would mean, 500 nuclear power plants in the US.
It's not going to happen.
Will be inevitable.
Not going to happen. And Carl, your expertise on all this is fantastic. Let me go quickly. Vina Colley and Dorothy Reich. Dorothy, go ahead, and then we'll go to Vina.
I away for a while, but did anybody discuss these mini nuclear power plants?
Yeah, the mini nukes are, they're a complete fantasy. They're already over budget and behind schedule. There are 0 large reactors operating in under construction in the United States. We still have 94 of the old junkers around, which are very, very dangerous. And Vina Colley is right in the heart of all that. But Dorothy, that the biggest betrayer actually is not Donald Trump, it's Gavin Newsom. The governor of California signed an agreement in 2018 to phase out the 2 reactors at Diablo Canyon and phase in a transition to solar, which would have been spectacular.
Don't talk to me about Gavin Newsom.
Yes.
They're about to give our whole electric grid over to Donald Trump right now.
Yes, and so Newsom is doing this song and dance of mocking Donald Trump, but totally signed
Democrats here supporting these mini nukes. Brian Schatz and I forget who else, another good, progressive Democrat, and
Hochul, where I live, New York State. She wants New York State to become a new center, New York, for nuclear power. And just to make an additional point, our piece closes with some brilliant analysis by Amory Lovins, the great Amory Lovins, because these days it's not just the claim that nuclear is necessary to deal with climate change, totally ignoring that the nuclear fuel cycle is carbon-intensive mining, milling, enrichment, and nuclear plants emit themselves carbon-14, radioactive carbon. But now the additional argument is that nukes are necessary because of artificial intelligence and data centers. And what Amory, doing an analysis, finds is that doubling the share of energy usage with these planned data centers would just bring it up to 3%. So that's also a
Yeah.
phony. That's also baloney.
Dorothy, thanks for raising the issue of those small reactors. The good news about small reactors is there aren't any. And it's something, a technology before it could even begin to have any kind of impact is 10, 15 years away, but they're going to spend tons of money and distract everybody from the real solution, which is solar, wind, batteries, geothermal. And Newsom has sabotaged that industry in California and really done tremendous damage. Can't even begin to say what Gavin Newsom has done to us. Terrible. Thank you, Dorothy. Vina Colley and then Cheryl Romanek. Vina?
Okay, I like to say, working inside a nuclear plant, the NRC has no jurisdiction. DOE and DOD has the jurisdiction. We also have NIOSH and OSHA, and that is their own employees that they train for these jobs, and they're not going to speak up against anybody unless they lose their jobs.
Yeah, it's really a nightmare. Vina is a veteran of the nuclear industry and really in the front lines in Southern Ohio fighting the enrichment there. But they're never going to, no one's, I will say this, no one will ever build a large reactor again in the United States. The last four have been catastrophes. You got two at VC Summer in South Carolina that completely failed, $9 billion, never got running. And then the two at Vogtle in Georgia, $40 billion, 15 years, ridiculous, and never ever compete with renewables. So now they want to try and do these small reactors. There's a lot of hype, Bill Gates, all these other people, but it's a complete disaster already. They've already failed, but it's a distraction because the what I call King Kong, coal, oil, nukes, and gas, are terrified of renewables because they can't control it, and it gives people the ability to walk away from the utility companies. So that's the war we're in.
And also renewables are coming through these days at a small fraction of the cost of nuclear and fossil fuel and so forth. I mean, they're here ready to be utilized, but pushing nuclear in this new nuclear push diverts resources that should go into a solartopia, into a world where we're getting energy through technologies that wouldn't kill us.
Renewable energy is to the utility and fossil nuclear industry what water was to the Wicked Witch of the North. And that's basically, the analogy. Cheryl Romanek, did you want to say something about this, Cheryl? And Carl, it's great to have you with us. Still have 67 people. So
yes, I would. I just have a quick question. I wonder, with all the people that are involved with trying to deploy this renewable energy, why do we continue to centralize stuff that doesn't need to be centralized, like wind energy? Why do we have to have conversations about huge wind turbines when that can be decentralized, solar can be decentralized? That's just my question. It's one thing I haven't seen a lot of discussion about.
Well, solar is a lot easier to decentralize than wind. I was in the wind business. Wind business is it's really complicated. And these offshore windmills do make sense. They are very large and they are scalable and they are ultimately cheap. Onshore wind is cheaper than offshore wind to start, but they've been fighting that tooth and nail, including especially in Ohio. We had $4 billion of private money ready to put wind power in the north coast of Ohio, and the legislature killed it with a single sentence. And then, of course, they got bribed by $61 million. So wind is more difficult to decentralize, but solar, the Germans now are getting a significant amount of electricity in Germany from single solar panels sitting on balconies. It's mind-boggling. You just buy a solar panel, you stick it on your balcony, and you get electricity. And that's for the utility industry. That's hell personified. That's the end. That's the end of the world as they know it, and that's why they're so terrified.
That's
So
only
thank you for
allowed
that.
in Utah right now. The only state in the country allows plug-in solar panels. So you don't have to become Mormon, but maybe you can move there and plug them in. All
Yeah,
right, thank you.
well, the LDS, which has changed to LSD, is all for solar, I hope.
Yeah,
Bonnie, Colleen, was there anything further you wanted to say? Okay, well, listen, we are basically.
you have Gary Crane that's in the wings. Do
Oh,
you
right.
remember?
Okay, Gary
Remember
Crane.
him?
We
I just wanted to apologize. I got choked. I want to say that the NRC has no jurisdiction over the DOE and DOE sites. On site, they hire their own employees to pretend like we have NIOSH and OSHA. And so these guys aren't going to speak out either because they have a job. If they speak out, they lose their job. But the
Well, in our article, and this is unprecedented, in the article that Carl and I have written, first of all, never in the history of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has a president intervened to fire a commissioner. And he did it. He fired a commissioner of the Nuclear Regulatory Commissioner, and then another one quit. And there's a headline in a major Washington newspaper, not the Post, that said that the commissioners understand that if they go against Trump and actually find technical reasons to not build a nuclear plant, he'll fire them.
Right.
How do you have a regulatory regime where the dictator can fire the regulators? It's ridiculous.
Well, they don't regulate. I mean, they don't do
They
anything. All
can't
they do,
now. They can't
they,
even think about it. I
they
mean,
sign a paper. If the DOE wants something, they sign it and give it to them. They do not
exactly.
regulate. The EPA has no jurisdiction. They only have
Okay.
jurisdiction off-site. No one has
Exactly right.
jurisdiction.
Thank you, Vina, for that. Okay, we got a few minutes for Gary Crane. Gary Crane has a 11-point organizing strategy. Gary, do you want to give us a quick rundown? We've got just about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. And that was really a great presentation from Howie and the woman in Ukraine and Carl Grossman and yourself. I just want to say, since almost nobody has really read the document, I asked for a little poll and nobody, not even one person read it.
Okay, so
And
here it is.
well, let me just finish my sentence. I'm just wondering if I can get 1 minute now, because you really are over time, and to encourage people to read it this week so they'll be ready for giving me some constructive criticism. And if they're really blown away by it, maybe want to help, but not really take up the time. Now no one's really read it. There's really no time.
Well, go ahead and tell us what's involved here. You got a couple of minutes. 11 arguments for the feasibility of a national civic uprising and a de facto national strike. So make the case, please, Gary, as only you can.
Well, I don't want to use up my time now because there's really no time. I want to basically get people to read it over the week so you can use my 5 minutes next week. Is that okay?
If that's what you want, I would advise
But
you getting.
I'll use 30 seconds to tell people why they should read it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So most people here are probably familiar with Erica Chenoweth's work that proves that basically the only thing that's ever been very effective at overthrowing fascist regimes like the one we have now has been massive nonviolent resistance. And Jonathan Pickney and other people, as well as Erica's most recent work, has made it very clear that electoral strategies are almost never successful in overthrowing fascist regimes. Of course, everybody should do everything they can to make sure we flip as many Republican Senate and House seats as possible in 2026. But to put all their eggs into that basket would be totally ignoring all the history showing that elections will be very, by the way, the Lever wrote 10 ways the Republicans are going to be rigging the election. So I encourage people to read that. So the only option we really have is a national civic uprising. The biggest problem, though, is that almost everybody thinks, oh, Americans are still not that desperate. They're not that angry. It's just really not feasible to get 12 million people. Well, these 11 arguments make the case, while it actually surprisingly would be feasible to get those kind of numbers, not all in the same day, but over 2 or 3 week time, which is what Eric is really talking about. It doesn't have to be all at once. So I hope people will read it, especially the first 5 hours. It only takes you 5 minutes to release the first 5 hours. And then the last thing, It's called the Act to Protect, which will get 23 major Hollywood celebrities to raise $400 million for this as well, and also do a lot to encourage moral courage, not just the celebrities, but morally courageous leaders now that are doing some very, very ballsy stuff that people need to know about.
Okay, well, also there's a strong ovarian movement along with the ballsy stuff. Thank you for that. Thank you, Gary. Everybody, if you want to download this, there's a link to the chat from Gary Crane will give you 5 minutes in a week. And thank you for joining us. Dorothy Reik, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I just, in case people don't know, there's going to be another massive No Kings rally, whatever you want to call it, on October 18th.
Okay.
Things are already being posted on Mobilize. Everybody needs to be out in the street. We need 10 million people, not 5 million people. The 3.5% is the tipping point, and 10 million plus might do the job, but you have to be out there. So Harvey, I hope you're going to publicize this.
Yes, we will. I had an idea that
let me finish. Go and Mobilize, and you can find an event near you. If you cannot find an event within 20 minutes of you, start your own. Even if you only have 25 people, 10, whatever, you need to make it convenient. People need to be out. They need to be out on October 18th, sometime during the day for a couple hours, and find a place that's visible where cars are going to pass by, where they can honk at you, or you can, so just do it. Just do it. You can do it. You can be your own organizer.
Well, the question then is, should that, one question that's been raised, should that event on October 18th include boycotting of any purchasing?
Well, they haven't done that yet. They're working. I think they're working on trying to do something, but unless you really shut down some part of the, in my opinion, unless you shut down some part of our I don't know, say our financial system some way, just maybe don't buy any meat, don't buy any chicken, whatever, but it has to go on for a while. It has to go on, it has to affect their quarterly reports, which is why now Trump just said the company should not make quarterly reports anymore, because that's what they're afraid of, that there's going to be some kind of an action that will affect the whole part of the financial system and cause their quarterly reports to go down, and that would be a really bad thing, and it would show our power. So I'm not sure what these indivisible people are up to. They're pretty smart, and just random boycotts aren't going to do any good. It has to be massive. It has to affect the economy.
Well, of course, the last No Kings Day, where we had 5, 6, 7 million people, Trump responded by attacking Iran. I don't know who this time he'll attack, but we got to be prepared for that. Dorothy, you're a great organizer. Thank you. I had thought that maybe people would do an economic boycott of some kind, and maybe not eat in restaurants, except ones that had a sign, a picture of, whatever, to identify them as part of the movement. But it sounds like great things are going ahead with that, Dorothy. Thank you. Borazmi?
Hello.
Please?
Yes, this is Nicole. Yes. I just listed the blackout the system. They asking for people to boycott everything, no buying, nothing between 18 and 21st.
Wow.
Somebody's showing it there now on the screen.
Well, Trump's people have made it very clear that this is a fascist movement. They're using this ridiculous killing to excuse all sorts of pure fascism. It is their burning of the Reichstag, and there will be more to come. We're definitely in the midst of a fascist coup. There's no doubt about that. It's not just the Republicans, by the way. The Democrats, or some Democrats, are supporting continuing with nuclear power, and they need to be opposed as well.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
We should boycott those airlines that fire those people for posting something, on their personal website, about the killing, because this is our First Amendment, and like American Airlines, United, and Delta, they all fight some people, and also the State Department, one of a congressman named Mass in Palm Beach, Florida, he is introducing some kind of something where the State Department can take away our passport and our visa if we say something that they don't like about Israel, and this is without without charging us. They can just unilaterally take our passport away, and that's with taking away our First Amendment rights, a right of free expression, and the right to travel.
I agree. Very well stated. Gary Crane, and then we're going to sign off.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say, people, feel free to email me during the week with your reactions, your suggestions. I just put something in the chat that would help make my presentation next week more effective for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in here? We're at 7:15 Eastern time. It's been an incredible session, really amazing. Heidi, go ahead, please. Heidi Vertaler, we still have 47 people with us. Heidi?
Yeah, I just wanted to find out. I haven't gotten traction in my email about next week. Can I still have a little bit of the floor next?